The Shark Deck.
Well, I got quite the one for you today. I almost did a bonus episode on Friday about this one. From Rolling Stone, the headline... Hi, I'm Johnny Mac with your Daily Comedy News. From Rolling Stone, the headline, Chaos, Comedy, and Crying Rooms Inside Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show. 16 current and former staffers say Jimmy Fallon's erratic behavior spoiled their dream of working on The Tonight Show. Oh my, Rolling Stone writes, it was a particularly tense day on the set of The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. The host, known for his warm and congenial presence on screen, was acting especially dismissive and irritable during production meetings. That according to a former longtime employee who told that to Rolling Stone. As the story goes, Jimmy then stumbled through rehearsal in front of a studio audience. Employees who spoke to Rolling Stone about their experiences on The Tonight Show say it's common knowledge behind the scenes that there are good Jimmy days and bad Jimmy days, and that was a bad Jimmy day. They say Fallon seemed to be confused during rehearsal that day in 2017 when he crossed out jokes on the piece of paper he was holding, riffed with the audience for the bit, and then looked back down at the same sheet of paper. The employee says he couldn't remember what he had just crossed out himself. I was like, oh my God, he seems drunk. He doesn't know what he's doing. This could be awful. This could be the end of the show right here. According to 2 current and 14 former employees, writes Rolling Stone, The Tonight Show has been a toxic workplace for years. They say the ugly environment behind the scenes starts at the top with Fallon's erratic behavior and has trickled down to its ever-changing leadership teams, 9 showrunners in the past 9 years. Staffers say it was commonplace to hear people joking about wanting to kill themselves, and they would refer to guest dressing rooms as crying rooms because that's where they would go to let out their emotions when they were upset with their alleged mistreatment. One former employee tells Rolling Stone, it's a bummer because it was my dream job. Writing for late night is a lot of people's dream jobs, and they're coming into this and it becomes a nightmare very quickly. It's sad that it's like that, especially knowing that it doesn't have to be that way. Rolling Stone contacted more than 50 Tonight Show employees, past and present. While many of them praised Fallon's immense talent and comedic gifts, not a single one agreed to speak on the record or had positive things to say about working on The Tonight Show. Wow. Nor would any of the program's 9 showrunners since 2014 comment about the program's namesake on the record. They wouldn't even give statements of support, as is common in the entertainment industry. Wow. All right. Let me take a time out from the article. I have met Jimmy Fallon, I want to say twice. It might be 3 times, and it might be 1 time. I definitely was with him when he was on Jim Brewer's show, and that was a decade ago. I want to say it was twice. The Jimmy Fallon I met was the Jimmy Fallon public persona, the nice, easygoing guy, so I don't know about any of these other things. I have never run into that part of Jimmy Fallon. After Rolling Stone published the report, Fallon apologized to staffers in an all-hands Zoom call, saying, it's embarrassing and I feel so bad. This according to 2 people who were on the call. Jimmy said, sorry if I embarrassed you and your family and friends. I feel so bad I can't even tell you. This next thing is interesting. In a statement, a spokesperson for NBC defended the program, but notably did not mention Fallon himself. The statement, we're incredibly proud of The Tonight Show, and providing a respectful working environment is a top priority. As in any workplace, we've had employees raise issues. Those have been investigated and action has been taken where appropriate. As is always the case, we encourage employees who feel they have experienced or observed behavior inconsistent with our policies to report their concerns so that we may address them accordingly. All right, in the second half of the podcast, I'm going to share with you my conspiracy theory, because I like conspiracy theories, but let me stay with this Rolling Stone article. They talk about when Jimmy left the late night show, the 12:30 show, and then went to the Tonight Show, and said behind the scenes there was a surprising, dramatic, and ugly shift in the working environment, according to 3 employees who originally worked on Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. These employees say they felt a change because Michael Shoemaker, who was at the helm of Late Night, didn't move over to the Tonight Show and stuck around to produce Late Night with Seth Meyers. A former employee says the producers felt this pressure, and that translated down to all their employees. People that worked under them felt this pressure that if you made one mistake, you were gone and would be easily replaced. You have all these NBC pages in the building who are ready, willing, and able to take your job. Another former employee said, nobody told Jimmy no. Everybody walked on eggshells, especially showrunners. You never knew which Jimmy we were going to get and when he was going to throw a hissy fit. Look how many showrunners went so quickly. We know they didn't last long. Another former employee, mentally, I was at the lowest place of my life. I didn't want to live anymore. I thought about taking my own life all the time. I knew deep down I'd never actually do it, but in my head I'm like, why do I think about this all the time? One employee says they lost nearly 20 pounds. I know other people who were in my department who were also unhappy with mistreatment, but it was never a thing where any of us were empowered enough to say anything. It just always felt like you should be grateful that you have a job, and you should be grateful that you have this position at this show, at this network. Everybody wants to be in the spot. You've worked hard to get here. It shouldn't be a thing where you're being ungrateful. Rolling Stone writes, according to most employees who spoke to Rolling Stone, it's common knowledge behind the scenes that Fallon's temperament, mood, and treatment of staffers is erratic. Wow, I had never heard that. A friend of mine told me the other day he had heard, I'll quote the friend who said, let me find it. That friend said, on the other hand, there's always been talks about drunk Jimmy. I had never personally heard that, but apparently people in this article have. Rolling Stone wrote, over the years there have been rumors and gossip items about Fallon's relationship with alcohol. In 2016, the New York Post ran a story alleging that NBC executives were concerned about Fallon's drinking. Fallon denied this in a New York Times profile published in 2017, saying, I could never do a day-to-day job if I was drinking every night. That's just kicking you when you're down. But two employees say they saw Fallon seemingly inebriated at work in 2017. Another two employees say on separate occasions in 2019 and 2020, they thought they smelled alcohol on Fallon's breath when they entered an elevator with him during the workday. One former employee said, it was like if Jimmy's in a bad mood, everybody's day is effed. People wouldn't joke around in the office and they wouldn't stand around and talk to each other. It was very much like focus on whatever it is you have to do because Jimmy's in a bad mood, and if he sees that, he might fly off. A commonly used phrase around the office, we're up against it. One former staffer says, when something was wrong, we all knew how to behave afterward, which was just sort of avoid eye contact and don't make another mistake. It happened over the smallest thing. Would have to shut the whole thing down. The sketch isn't happening. When things like that would happen, you just beat yourself up. A former employee says, sometimes would get nice, Jimmy, but that was sometimes not a lot. It was just really, really sad to me that this talented man created such a horrible environment for the people there. Two employees remember witnessing Fallon scolding the cue card guy in the middle of a taping with Jerry Seinfeld. They say it was an uncomfortable moment. Seinfeld told Fallon to apologize to the cue card production member, which then he allegedly did. A former employee said, it was very awkward, and Jerry was like, you should apologize to him, almost trying to make it a joke. It was one of the strangest moments ever, and so many people were there, so it's kind of hard to forget. I'll talk about Jerry's reaction to all this in a minute. Some spin control went out, including the NBC statement I read earlier. Also, a current employee of the show spoke with People and described Jimmy Fallon as super communicative and a really, really positive guy. He makes a point of commending you when you do a great job and when he's happy. Any feedback I've always received is like, hey, we don't need to do that again. It's been very constructive and helpful for me in continuing to put together a show he's happy with. I've never been belittled, yelled at, nothing like that. It's all exactly how a boss should give feedback to an employee. Jerry Seinfeld spoke to People about the moment and said, I remember this moment quite well. I teased Jimmy about a flub, and we all had a fun laugh about how rarely Jimmy's thrown off. It was not uncomfortable at all. Jimmy and I still occasionally recall it and laugh. Idiotic twisting of events. All right, let's take the break here, and then I'll tell you about my conspiracy theory. Let's start with the New York Times from 2017, who wrote, Jimmy Fallon was on top of the world, then came Trump. Once the undisputed juggernaut of the late-night category, Mr. Fallon's Tonight Show, a celebrity-friendly cavalcade of games and gags, has seen its ratings decline in recent months. Meanwhile, his politically pointed competitor Stephen Colbert has closed what was once a formidable gap of nearly 1 million viewers. So I was curious about the late-night ratings. I found an article here, just picking a random week of January 16th, 2023, from the Futon Critic. Jimmy Kimmel Live ranked as the #1 late-night talk show among adults 18 to 49, beating The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon by 21% and Colbert by 27%. Kimmel, 307,000 viewers. Fallon, 253. Colbert, 241. A Google search suggests Jimmy Fallon makes $16 million hosting The Tonight Show. A different Google search shows Seth Meyers makes $5 million hosting late night. Here's my conspiracy theory. And this is just me in the basement, daydreaming. You know how I pointed out last year that it was weird that The Daily Show didn't name a replacement host and they were doing the guest host thing? And then I finally figured out, oh, there's a writer's strike coming. So if they had announced The Daily Show with super new host, that host would have gotten about 2-3 months and then disappeared and they would have had to relaunch it. So it made sense in retrospect to do the guest hosts. And now, right now, they're not paying anybody to host The Daily Show because there is no Daily Show. So you don't need a host and the host doesn't draw salary. Now, let's look at The Tonight Show. Next year, there's a presidential election. That's not Jimmy's stronghouse. That's Colbert's wheelhouse, and Kimmel's good at it. So are we looking at The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon finishing third in 2024? And if so, why are we paying him $16 million? Meanwhile, CBS, when James Corden stepped down from the Late Late Show, they decided they're not going to do a 12:30 show anymore. Maybe NBC's looking at that and going, why are we doing a 12:30 show here in the 2020s? Maybe that doesn't make sense. So, what if this is some sort of way to exit Jimmy Fallon from The Tonight Show when The Tonight Show's not even on, save that salary, and then when you come back to an all-new Tonight Show with Seth Meyers. Seth currently making 5, which is less than Jimmy's 16. Pick a number between 5 and 16. Seth would be happy. Seth would host The Tonight Show. Everybody wants to host The Tonight Show, right? And Jimmy's gone, and Seth's probably better at the political stuff. Pretty wacky conspiracy theory there, Johnny Mac. Yes, I agree. All right, what about Lorne Michaels? He'd be pretty upset if you got rid of Jimmy Fallon, wouldn't he? Yes. But Lorne wants to stick around to do the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live. Lorne is going to take that victory lap. So no matter how mad Lorne gets, he's not going to storm out of NBC in year 49 of SNL, and it's going to be a shortened year of SNL. Lorne's going to want the victory lap. So Lorne's going to stick around. So even if you push out his buddy Jimmy Fallon, I think he'll find a way to get over it. So why did this article suddenly come out? Were people just bored? Does this have something to do with the writer's strike? Or am I onto something with this conspiracy theory? Again, I'm just daydreaming. Probably everything I said is absolutely wrong. You let me know what you think in the Facebook comments, Daily Comedy News podcast group. And that's your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your shows. See you tomorrow.